In September 2019, the Ghana Education Service initiated the Standards-Based Curriculum. This digital-first mandate required a departure from decades of established teaching practices. Under the old, objective-based curriculum, students were passive recipients of facts. Success meant rote memorization. The new curriculum demanded active problem-solving, collaborative learning, and social constructivism. Teachers were instructed to become facilitators of critical thinking. Yet, as the 2025-2026 academic year approaches, a distinct chronological anomaly remains. Across the country, teachers are still submitting handwritten, objective-based lesson notes. This reliance on legacy paperwork is a rational survival response to a systemic failure. To understand why legacy outputs persist, we examine the Ghanaian education system through a tripartite misalignment. At the top is the policy layer, driven by progressive mandates like the National Teacher Standards, designed to build a 21st century knowledge economy. Directly beneath sits the operational layer, a resource-starved reality lacking basic infrastructure. At the base is the accountability layer. Driven by high-stakes exams, this tier evaluates using legacy metrics the policy layer intends to eliminate. Educators are trapped between these opposing gears. When the operational tools are missing and the final assessments reward old behaviors, teachers generate obsolete outputs to navigate an environment changed in theory but not in substance. A competency-based curriculum assumes a competency-based environment. The SBC explicitly requires active learning, which relies on digital hyperlinked tablets, stable internet connectivity, and flexible spaces for group collaboration. This photograph captures the intended digital-first interaction between teachers and students. The curriculum materials were designed with embedded URLs and media targeted for student devices. This chart maps out the hardware deficits in regions like Bono East for the 2025-2026 academic year. In Class C and D schools, the high-speed connectivity and functional ICT labs required by the SBC are missing from the daily instructional environment. Here we see the physical constraints of the classroom reality. With student-to-teacher ratios exceeding 80:1, the space for modular, project-based learning is unavailable. Without digital resources or physical space, project-based facilitation is impossible. The teacher has exactly one functional option to manage 80 students: return to the traditional lecture. Notice the physical reliance on handwriting here. If a teacher's only viable method is a lecture, their official lesson notes will naturally mirror that reality. The Ghana Education Service accepts these traditional lesson notes because rejecting them would penalize teachers for structural hardware failures beyond their control. The officers enforcing the new standards are the School Improvement Support Officers, or CISOs. However, their physical access to remote districts is blocked by inadequate transport. Furthermore, without raincoats, boots, or life jackets, CISOs cannot visit schools during rainy seasons. Furthermore, most lack a dedicated circuit-level office space. Without a centralized hub, supervisors remain physically and professionally disconnected from the teaching staff. Unable to provide deep supervision inside the classroom, CISOs default to basic administrative checks. It creates a culture of compliance over quality. For a stretched supervisor, the pedagogical alignment of a lesson note is secondary to whether a physical note exists to be stamped. The final mechanism locking legacy outputs into place is the accountability layer. In Ghana, educational success is measured by terminal examinations like the BECE and the WASI. This creates the washback effect, where high-stakes exams retroactively dictate classroom pedagogy. In 2026, BECE topics still prioritize content knowledge and recall. This forces a direct conflict. The exam tests rote memory, while the curriculum demands complex problem-solving. Compounding this is widespread confusion over complex assessment tools, particularly the mandated depths of knowledge frameworks. When teachers struggle with new rubrics, they immediately fall back on familiar, summative models. Teachers face intense economic and social pressure. Parents, communities, and head teachers judge a school's value by its pass rates on these national exams. If the BECE rewards objective-based learning, producing competency-based work outputs is an act of professional self-sabotage. Teachers teach to protest, and their documentation matches that effort. The Ghana Education Service faces constant pressure from powerful teacher unions like GNAT and NAGRAT to maintain classroom stability and avoid industrial action. The initial rollout of the SBC asked teachers to produce comprehensive portfolios and execute highly detailed lesson plans with complex competency mapping. With class sizes already exceeding capacity, unions resisted this as an unmanageable administrative overload. Ghanaian teachers are also navigating socio-cultural sensitivities. Following public controversies over gender identity phrasing, many educators became cautious. Relying on traditional, culturally safe lesson formats minimizes their professional risk. To appease frustrated head teachers and avoid union strikes, Deputy Director General Dr. Tondo issued a directive in early 2024. It established a dual acceptance policy, officially allowing both manual and electronic lesson notes. While intended to ease the transition, the result was immediate. Instead of modernizing, the electronic notes largely became digitized transcriptions of old objective-based plans, ignoring the differentiated instruction phases mandated by the SBC. Generative AI is accelerating this trend. Teachers instantly produce formatted documents that demonstrate paper compliance, even if those notes have no relationship to the traditional lectures occurring in the classroom. By prioritizing labor peace and administrative pragmatism over rigorous enforcement, the GES lowered the entry barrier. The dual acceptance policy officially sanctioned the survival of the legacy curriculum. Ghana's educational reform exists in stagnant transition. A progressive policy layer grinds against stationary operational and accountability layers. To synchronize by 2027, training must be continuous, embedded in practice, and locally led. Simultaneously, reforming the national exam structure is non-negotiable. Until the BECE and WASI test critical competencies instead of factual recall, classroom behavior won't shift. Finally, the digital deficit must be closed. Without the physical hardware and connectivity required by the curriculum, active learning cannot occur. The persistent stacks of handwritten, obsolete lesson notes reflect an environment demanding 21st century outputs from 20th century infrastructure. Until the tools in the classroom and the exams at the end of the year align with the mandates from the top, the progressive vision of the standards-based curriculum will remain trapped on paper.